Yes. The answer is yes.
2, 3, 4.
It's talking with Trenton, it's talking with Trenton. He's talking even when nobody listens. It's talking with Trenton, so pay attention to the latest edition of Talking with Trenton.
Hello, good friends. Today we're going to be talking about this book, The Case for Christ. And boy, he thick. But first, if you're new here, hi, I'm Trenton. I love you. This is my YouTube channel where every Tuesday we talk about things that improve our lives. And together, we make the world a tad bit better, one day at a time. If you want to join the group Poop Scoop Dupe, feel free to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. It's free. And if you hit it hard enough, maybe it'll explode. The Case for Christ is about an atheist journalist whose wife comes home one day and is like, babe, I'm a Christian now. And then he's like, LOL, God's not real, stupid woman. And then he traveled around the world to prove it. Then he comes back and he's like, LOL, whoops, I was wrong. God is totally real and I'm a Christian now. Here, read this book and I'll tell you all about it. Now, I should probably tell you that if you're watching this and you're like, Trenton, what the heck? God is not real and you are stupid. Okay, I hear you. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I still love you and we can still be friends. But the fact is that God has done so much in my life that I cannot help but to share his love with others, especially you guys. So I will not shut up about it. Now, if you don't know who God is, or perhaps you've only heard misunderstandings of who God is, let me fill you in. I think too many people look at God as if he is just an old bearded guy living in the sky that doesn't want us to have any fun. Mainly, I think that this is the product of the devil who has twisted the truth over and over and over, and now most of the world doesn't know what's true anymore. And the truth is, God is real. He created the universe and he created you. He loves you, and that means that he wants you to have a good life and keep you from getting yourself hurt. Satan, or the devil, wants the exact opposite, and so he lies to us about who God is. And so it's very easy to get lost and forget what's true. Anyway, Lee Strobel spent decades as an investigative journalist. He witnessed dozens of trials, and his job was to research. He was supposed to weigh all of the possibilities of each trial and then write articles about his findings. The Case for Christ is basically when he put Jesus on trial, and he looked at all of the evidence on both sides to prove if he was real or not real. First of all, I should say that the historical community, by and large, doesn't question if Jesus was real. Most scholars understand and accept that Jesus was indeed a guy that lived. The only question is, was Jesus the Son of God? In this book, my boy Lee talks to a lot of really smart people. He cross-checks all 4 Gospels and looks into when each of them were written, and he even gets into the science behind Jesus' crucifixion. Now, I am not a scholar.
Of course you're not. You're an idiot.
Shut up, Steve. I'm not a scholar, but the people in this book absolutely are. They are some of the smartest people on the planet, and they say that God is real. Of course, I know that a lot of smart people say that God is not real. So who's wrong and who's right? Honestly, I think that's where you come in. This world is filled with people who contradict each other. And in my opinion, we will get nowhere if all we do is scream and nobody stops to listen. So I urge you to watch this video, read the book, and do your own research. Don't listen to what anybody tells you just because they said it. As Lee says in the book, please look at this as if it is an actual legal case and you are on the jury. You must set aside all of your biases, weigh all the evidence, and keep an open mind. That being said, let's look at some of the really interesting parts of this book. Shall we?
The Case for Christ.
One of skeptics' most popular arguments against the Case for Christ is that the Gospels, that's the books Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were written way too long after Jesus lived that they couldn't possibly be accurate. The guy he asked this to said this is not a good argument, and he explained using one of the world's most well-known military commanders as an example. Nobody doubts the credibility of Alexander the Great's biographies, even though they were written long after Alexander lived, over 400 years after, in fact, while Jesus' biographies, the Gospels, were only written around 30 years after Jesus lived. Historically speaking, he says this is like a news flash, especially compared to Alexander the Great. I thought this was super cool because it reminded me that the Bible is actually a history book. It's been cross-checked with other historical documents that have been accepted as true, so why is the Bible not accepted? One reason is they say that the Bible has too many contradictions that it couldn't possibly be true. However, the case for Christ settles this argument as well. Most historians will tell you that just because a document has contradictions doesn't mean it's not trustworthy. In fact, if a testimony in court has no contradictions, this raises red flags, because it may lead the jury to believe that the witness could have colluded together to get their story straight. So, just because the Bible has many contradictions doesn't mean that it's not trustworthy. It simply means that the authors simply wrote what they observed was happening. Another piece of information I think is important is about the resurrection. Followers of Jesus note the resurrection as the single most important event in all of history, and certainly in their faith. Jesus was crucified and he died. Then he rose from the grave 3 days later. And while to our human brains this sounds crazy, we have to understand that simply believing that there is a God means that laws of nature can be broken. We just can't comprehend it because we're only human. He then goes on to explain that the resurrection is very unlikely to be a myth because the time frame between when it happened and when it was documented is far too short. When Jesus rose from the grave, then it was written that he did so. The time period was only between 2 and 3 years. Historians have yet to provide any evidence of any myth or legend being created in that short of a time period. Basically, he's saying that the disciples couldn't have possibly made up the resurrection because the time frame was too short to create any kind of legend. The next point that a lot of skeptics have is that the Catholic Church threw out a lot of books of the Bible. Many people believe that this was for political reasons or simply because they didn't like what the books had to say. A prime example of this is the Gospel of Thomas, claimed to have been written by Didymus Judas Thomas. This document came to light in the 5th century. It contains over 114 sayings that were attributed to Jesus. This includes that Jesus said, "Cursed is the woman and blessed is the man, for if a woman becomes a man, she can then enter the kingdom of God." Okay, so you see why this might be problematic, right? Well, the thing is, most historians have widely accepted that the Gospel of Thomas is simply not accurate. It was written way after Jesus lived, like 500 to 600 years after Jesus lived. This is only one case of why certain books were not included in the Bible. Other reasons were that the books didn't align with history, or sometimes they were proved to have not been written by the supposed author. Basically, the rejected books were not included in the Bible, not because the church didn't like what they had to say, but because they simply were not accurate. And they didn't hold up to the criteria like the other books. Another point that skeptics make is, what if Jesus was just a masterful hypnotist? This would explain all of the miracles that he did. And what if he just did certain mind games on the disciples to make them think that he was resurrected? The scholar being interviewed laughed at this hypothesis. He said, "It's an interesting point, but hypnotism doesn't work on every single person. In fact, hypnotists are known to look at select people in the crowd and see who may be most susceptible to their hypnotism. They then choose their volunteers based on this observation." Jesus did miracles for audiences made up of over 5,000 people. It just simply isn't scientifically possible for Jesus to have hypnotized all of them. Another point is, according to the Gospels, and remember, they are historically accurate, Jesus was seen alive, he was then seen dead, and he was then seen by several people alive again. Based on this incredible feat, an entire religion was created. If Jesus was not dead to begin with, why on earth would anybody have wanted to follow him based on his condition? He would have been so weak, bruised, and bleeding everywhere that anyone that called him God would have been seen as insane. They would have felt bad for him and wanted to take care of him, not bow down and call him Lord. But the fact is that after he was dead, he was seen alive. And this caused the disciples to want to worship him as Lord. And they were even eventually killed for following him, even though they had every reason not to. How does anybody explain that? This next part blew my mind. So, the Old Testament has over 300 prophecies that would one day be fulfilled. These are things that the prophets predicted would happen. And one day, one man known as the Messiah would come and save the entire world so we could all live with him forever. Long before Jesus was even born, the Jewish people knew about all of these prophecies. And then, when Jesus was born, every single one of them was fulfilled. So, what if that's just a coincidence? Impossible. The book states that for any one man to fulfill just 8 of these prophecies, it is one chance in over 100 million billion. I can't count that high. To put it a different way, if you took this amount of silver dollars and laid them all next to each other, it would fill the entire state of Texas to a depth of over 2 feet. Then, if you marked one of these coins and told a blind man to wander around the entire state, and he bent down and picked up a coin, the chances of it being that marked coin is this. It can't happen. You'd say it's basically impossible. Yet, Jesus fulfilled every single prophecy. This is crazy.
The case for Christ.
So, that is just a few things that I thought were interesting about this book. I really hope it sparks your interest and causes you to start your own investigation. Like I said, following Jesus has been the single most important decision I've ever made, and I do not ever regret it for even a second. Reading this book reminded me how clever and how creative God is. He left us so much information to investigate. And when we keep an open mind and an open heart, it only brings us closer and closer to Him. Honestly, I'm not really the kind of guy that needs to do a lot of research in order to believe that something is true. When it comes to God, I've seen Him working in my life, and you cannot convince me otherwise. That being said, this book is an incredible book all about the case for Christ and how He exists and how you need to investigate Him yourself. I think it's really cool that there's this much data out there to prove His existence. It's almost like He put it there on purpose. He ends the book with a great C.S. Lewis quote. I am ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but not as the Son of God. This is the one thing we must never say. Lewis then explains that if Jesus were not the Son of God, He would not be a great moral teacher. He would be insane or something worse. Someone claiming to have all the answers and still only be human is not worthy of being followed. So we must make our decision. Either follow Jesus as Lord or don't. But the decision is ours to make, and it is extremely important. Case closed! Yay! And that is the case for Christ. I hope you're still watching this. I know I hit you with a lot of information, but I thought it was all really interesting, so hopefully you did too. As always, thank you so much for watching. I work really hard on these videos, and it means the world to me that you take the time to watch. If you like this video, please do me a huge favor and give me a thumbs up and subscribe and comment what you thought. Do you have any amazing stories of what God has done in your life? I'd really love to hear about it in the comments. Either way, I love you, and I'm so happy that you guys are in the Tad Bit Better family. Have a great Easter, and as always, have a great, great week. And until next time, I hope your day just got a tad bit better.
TADBitBetterTV. TADBitBetterTV, where you watch some great videos. Click the left side of the screen to see what we made last week. Click the right side of the screen to see some of my faves. I'm sorry that didn't rhyme, but that's okay. Please don't hate. I'll see you next Tuesday. Goodbye. I'll see you later, alligator. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.